Now, a bombshell new ITV documentary about killer nurse Lucy Letby has raised questions about the case against her. She's currently serving 15 whole life sentences for 7 murders and 7 attempted murders of babies. Letby's new barrister, Mark MacDonald, claims the evidence used to prosecute her is not up to scrutiny.
I didn't just wake up one morning and think, oh, I'm going to go and represent Lucy Letby. I've been involved in miscarriages of justice now for the last 20 years, and I knew that there were fundamental flaws in the way that the prosecution were approaching these types of cases. There's no direct evidence. No one saw her do anything wrong, but we're going to go through the medical notes, we're going to go through the x-rays, and we're just going to put together a theory. And she was convicted on that theory. I'm dealing with an educated guess, but an educated guess that convinced the jury.
Well, there have been a lot of questions around this case. You watched the documentary, Brenda, said you were absolutely gripped by it, actually. What did you think before you watched it? What did you think afterwards? Did it make you change your perception?
So we've discussed this on here before, and at that time, with what I was told, I was like, think about the families and, you know, she's got the right sentence. Then watching the documentary last night, I'm now very conflicted because it told in the documentary of the evidence that was given and evidence that wasn't given. But what they've said, there was no medical evidence that they could prove, what they were saying in the documentary, that they could prove that there was any medical evidence. So it was based on circumstantial evidence, which, you know, for something so... I mean, I feel sorry for the families and the fact that they have to keep going through this grief and they can't get closure on it. But if there's new evidence, then somebody should really be able to hear it. If it wasn't a total, if it was guilty, you know what I mean.
Very, very difficult for the families, even if any of them are watching
for a retrial.
You know, every time this case is discussed, and it has been discussed a lot at the time and since, you know, very difficult for them. However, surely they still want the truth, even if it wasn't.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think, you know, they raised that very early in the documentary, and of course, you know, the families have been through a horrific incident which has, you know, impaired their lives in many ways, and I can understand that it's really difficult for them for this process to be going on and on, but I imagine that what they want is the truth. They want the truth about what happened to their babies. And if there's any suggestion that we haven't got the full picture, then I think it's very important to keep investigating. And having watched this documentary and the one before that they did on Panorama, I have to say this was a brilliant documentary. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you really should catch it, because... Did it make you question? Yeah, I mean, the initial Panorama one made me question, because they talked a lot about the sort of circumstantial nature of the evidence, which they do again here, and they have some really incredible and very, very respectable witnesses questioning what colleagues in the medical profession have come up with. And it feels like there was definitely a lot of personal opinion allowed to influence what happened in the courtroom. But the other stuff that they have in there as well, aside from the scientific information, is that they have interviews with her best friend and with the woman who is the head of the nurses and was in charge of Lucy Letby. Sorry, my earpiece just fell out. And you know, listening to them, you know, her best friend, they were friends all the way through school. And she talked about how Lucy had wanted to be a nurse from the age of about 11, and it was her dream, and she wanted to look after babies. And her friend was so full of love for the friendship that they'd had, and the fact that she'd been able to go to her wedding when she was on bail and things. And, you know, it was really compelling to hear her version of who this woman was, because I only know her as someone vilified in every paper across the land, your child murderer, Myra Hindley, etc. And even more compelling, I think, was the head of the nurses, who just at the end of the documentary says, honestly, I just don't think she did it. Well, and when you add that to the circumstantial evidence, you think at the very least there should be a retrial.
Well, I think there are too
establish.
many. When we had when Panorama did their documentary, we had the producer and director, I think, or two, and one said, no, I think absolutely she did do it, and he said, I absolutely think she didn't. So two people that were very closely involved followed the trial, followed everything. And for me, I don't know all the details. There are too many professional people, intelligent professional people, now saying, I'm not sure about this. There are things coming to light. Again, we have to be careful what we say because it will be ongoing if there is a retrial. There are too many people now questioning it for me to think maybe there's new evidence now that might prove otherwise, and therefore surely she deserves a retrial.
Well, I think the whole notion of a female child serial killer is so very, very rare that that in itself means that the trial was going to get massive worldwide media coverage, and now all these questions have come into play, and it is true that because the circumstances were so unusual, people focused on who was Lucy Letby, what was her personality, and they based their judgments on what she looked like. The few pictures, on this picture in particular, she seems impassive.
And when she was arrested.
And when she was arrested, she didn't react. So we have formed opinions based on very small amount of information. I think at the very least there should be a judicial inquiry into how the trial was conducted, and at the end of that inquiry by an independent judge, they can decide whether there is enough material for a retrial. Because obviously considerable expense has gone into the first trial, and if we do another trial, it will cost a fortune. But I agree with Mariella that if there's any question that these are unsafe convictions, there should be...
Well, I have to read this. Sorry, Brenda, I know you want to come in. The Crown prosecution have said Lucy Letby was convicted of 15 separate counts following 2 jury trials. The Court of Appeal dismissed Letby's leave to appeal on all grounds, rejecting her argument that expert prosecution evidence was flawed. We've carried out our disclosure obligations appropriately at each stage. The defence have made an application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, and therefore we will not be commenting further about the case at this time. 20 seconds, Brenda. Did you want to say something else?
No, it's all right. I'm
sure.
I think one of the things that also comes up in this is that there were other people, there was mismanagement at the hospital. We've seen all kinds of things happen since then in terms of people being arrested and so on. And I think that there's so much evidence pointing to the fact that this was not just a single woman's acts, if it was at all.
We asked you at home, should Lucy Letby be granted a retrial? And it's 50-50. Yes, 50%, no, 50%. Thank you very much for taking part in that.